Welcome to the Will Caminada podcast. I'm your host and guide, Will Caminada. This is a conversation episode where I bring a special guest to share with us their spiritual awakening journey and their expertise so that we can all be inspired, educated, and feel connected as one. Hello, beautiful soul. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm grateful and honored that you chose to listen to the Will Caminada podcast. And in today's episode, I had the pleasure to talk to Melissa Faith Ramirez, who is a transformative guide and intuitive coach based in Honolulu, Hawaii. Melissa holds lovingly raw space for those that desire to go deep, let go of their baggage, level up their power, and live in their true authenticity. Melissa is an incredible woman and gorgeous soul, and her purpose is to guide fellow humans through their awakening journey. We are also good friends, and we had an amazing conversation. We talked about surrendering. She talked about her spiritual awakening journey, the power of surrendering, and trusting this divine guidance and trusting your dopeness. I hope that you enjoy the show, and if you do, please hit the subscribe button, leave a comment or a review on Apple Podcast, and share this episode with your friends. Enjoy it. Melissa, thank you so much for being here. We had an awesome conversation earlier. I think it was about two or 3 months ago on my Instagram. By the way, it's still saved there in my IGTV, and it was wonderful. And I just thought we have to do it again.
Absolutely.
Because we have a lot to talk and we have a lot to learn from each other. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Will. It's always a pleasure exchanging with you. And, we were just sharing how we met back in 2018, right? We planted the seed. We were still in our diaper phase, and look where we are now, right? Really allowing ourselves.
We were talking about doing a podcast, and then my podcast is here. Yours is cooking, right?
That's right.
So that's
gotta trust your dopeness.
amazing. Yeah.
Thank you,
Well, to start off, and before we talk about your amazing work as a transformative guide and intuitive healer, I'd love for you to talk more about your spiritual awakening journey. And I know we talked about it in our previous chat, but I just wanted to go deeper. I talk a lot about the spiritual awakening here on the Soul Art podcast. And I personally see it as a journey. We are all always awakening to certain levels and certain extents. Sometimes we don't have the language and we don't say that. And I actually believe that 2020 is the year of global awakening. However, I do understand when we start learning more about spirituality and the healing journey, and then we sort of attribute our awakening to specific moments in our lives, usually moments that were painful or difficult or challenging. But I would love for you to share, because I know you've been through a lot and you've surrendered a lot. And I was looking at your website, and it says, as a recovering Catholic Colombian raised in New York City, I felt torn most of my adult life, not understanding who I was and less who I wanted to be. So could you take us from there?
Absolutely.
Guide us a little bit into your story and why you were feeling this way to today, to how you awakened.
Beautiful. So that says it all. Recovering Catholic, culturally very tied, a lot of expectations, external expectations of how I should live life, how I shouldn't live life. And I internalized that very much. And life was grand. Life was grand on the outside, but there was a gaping hole on the inside that I couldn't really identify. And in about 2009, I started opening up to this conversation, but I wasn't giving myself permission to go full in.
Mm-hmm.
It was more, I was just living in desperation and despair, and nobody was really talking about this awakening process. It was very secretive. I remember watching YouTube videos and nobody would show their face, or they change their voices. So in 2015, I would normally wake up around 3 o'clock in the morning, and I realized that it was a moment where we do have really gorgeous downloads coming in when we usually get woken up between 3 and 5 in the morning. And I was just sitting in a meditation and rocking, hysterical, because I was at a point where I was like, I don't know if I want to live on this earth plane anymore. It just doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. And as I'm rocking, I hear a soft whisper say, go to Hawaii. I was like, what? I'm in New York City in the dead of winter, and
Right.
I
And
surrendered.
what were you doing in New York City? What was your life like?
Mm. I was a typical New York City girl. I was very much in the lifestyle of entertainment and nightclubs, and I worked in corporate America, and I lived my life was very good on the outside. I was very popular, very well known. I had a name for myself. But like I said before, it wasn't really me. It was like this
Mhm.
mask, but I was
On the
wearing various
outside, people would
masks.
think that you got it
Perfect.
all figured out. You're
Perfect.
living
Yeah.
living the
Yeah.
dream.
Yeah. And I remember when I first said, I think I'm depressed. And my family's like, how can you be depressed? Look at you. You have everything. And I'm like, I don't know, but this is really, I'm just sad all the time. So it was really fascinating to see how it took me to just really surrender to all of this, and let go of the labels, and let go of how this needs to look and what this needs to be. And that voice told me to go to Hawaii. I just trusted it. And I remember, because as a recovering Catholic, I had a very torn, broken relationship with God. I remember being 8 years old, and we're every Sunday going to church with our best Sunday clothing, right? Right? And I'm in the living room waiting for my folks to go to church. And I refused to go. Like, come on, let's go to church. And I'm like, nope, I'm not going. I'm 8. And they're like, why aren't you going? We have to go to church. And I'm like, because we can worship God right here. This doesn't make sense. Why do we have to go there? And that
Mhm.
was the first time I actually voiced all of these things that I was feeling and thinking. Um,
Yeah, it was funny.
and
I used to feel the same way. And then one of the things that I used to question, even at a young age, was how come this God is judging who's going to heaven or not? How come
yeah,
this God, how come I need to ask forgiveness? You know,
yeah,
it's
same.
these things. I mean, I have learned a lot of things from my Catholic background,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and I do think that Jesus is
mm,
an amazing being.
mm,
He's a
mm-hmm,
messenger for sure.
mm-hmm.
And I do think that his message got lost a little bit along the way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. No,
Go.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, because we walked similar paths, you being Brazilian and me being
Mhm.
Colombian, right? This is
Yeah, I
very
think it's
similar
part of our
mentality,
culture.
part of our culture, then colonialism and all that, right? So it was it was it was it was a space where I didn't believe there was a God. I really became full atheist at this point,
Oh
because I
wow.
really was kind of like F off,
Hmm.
when in 2015 when I had that moment and I heard go to Hawaii.
Hmm.
And I remember hearing that and looking up at the sky. I'm like, if you're fucking real, let me know. I was so angry. And I get to my laptop and I'm going at the laptop angrily trying to find information how to get to Hawaii. And
Hmm.
when I let go of the anger and I let myself cry, I went back into the laptop and everything just fell into place. The
Hmm.
flight that I had to find, my storage unit, I was able to post my apartment, and within 24 hours I was able to sell it. It was like everything just was in accordance to how it needed to be.
Hmm.
And that was the first time I understood this conversation of surrender, right?
Right. And just before we get to when you fly to Hawaii, in hindsight, are you able to understand why you were feeling perhaps depressive, why you were feeling so unhappy. Can
Very
you
much.
point?
Absolutely. I was living a facade. I was living a life that everybody else wanted for me. And I
Mm,
was living a life that I thought, this glamorous life that I thought would validate me,
mhm,
right? And I didn't realize how much I looked for external validation. I didn't realize how much I never spoke my truth. I was always speaking whatever needed to be said in the moment, or needed to be heard by the other. One of the jobs that I had, I was running a national campaign, and I'm at a table with 10 men, me, one woman, at a table with 10 men and their corporate sponsors. So in a sense, I was kind of playing this sexual game with them without really understanding the depth of what it was.
mhm,
And getting my way, because I knew how to get my way, right? And youth coercing, right? That energy. But very unconscious to it at the time. It was just something that was survival, right? It was, if I need to get these $500,000 from this corporate sponsor, I'm going to do whatever it takes because I need to win. I had a
mhm,
very masculine kind of persona, like go 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 hard, New York City,
mhm.
right? Like you have to survive, you have to gouge the person in front of you in order to get to the top. So it was very clear that I was just living the life that deemed to be exciting and adventurous and successful. But
Mhm,
for me, that wasn't a definition of success.
mhm.
Society told me it was.
And you were trying to
Just,
fit in that standard, that definition. It's almost
yeah.
like you're climbing a mountain that people told you to climb, and then you got to the top of the mountain, and you're like, "Oh, this is not what I want."
Not what I wanted. Why am I here? Yeah, it's true. It's very true. Yeah. And just like all the different masks that I remember wearing a lot of different masks. So I had a mask with my parents, I had a mask with my family, I had a mask with my partner, I had a mask with my boss, I had a mask, yeah. And knowing how to flip quickly the switch whenever I needed to. It was like I was a chameleon, and I still am naturally a chameleon,
Mhm.
but I was a chameleon back then with a purpose to just survive,
Yeah,
right?
you're
With a purpose to
camouflaging.
just, yes, completely. Yeah. Your song came up the other day when I had it
Yeah,
on
but
shuffle.
on the other side, did you feel like you had these intuitive gifts? Were you a
Mm,
sensitive? Were you an empath? Because you mentioned you were meditating, and that's how you started
yeah.
listening to this voice. So how was
So
your relationship to this more spiritual aspect?
mm, um, I was a seeker. I was a seeker. I had lived in Japan for some time, so I studied Buddhism. I studied Shintoism. I lived in a Buddhist temple for 3 months, and I went to India, and I was living in it's escaping me right now. I was living with a guru for some time there, and I was always a seeker. But now looking back in retrospect, I was a seeker. I was a desperate seeker, not knowing why I was seeking. I was just
That's
trying
very
to,
common.
I was trying to grasp my way and find meaning, find purpose. Because,
Externally.
yes, yes, exactly. It, through spirituality, which is like, a conflict right then and
Mhm.
there, right? So I always was into yoga and meditation, and allowed my feminine nature to be, but it wasn't conscious. It was very unconscious. It
Mhm.
was it was with a goal in mind. It wasn't just being present to the journey and allowing things to unfold. It
And
was,
almost like perhaps looking for the solution or the answers outside of yourself
yeah,
to
exactly.
find out that the answers are always
Are
within.
all within, right? And it's funny when I started receiving information, because now I'm a channel and a psychic and into it. But back then, because I was in depression, I was in severe anxiety, I was suicidal, I was
Mhm.
hearing these voices, and I was like, I'm really losing my mind now. And there was a moment where I remember driving to the insane asylum, because it was an insane asylum about 2 miles from my home,
Mm-hmm.
and standing in front saying, I need to admit myself because I don't know what else to
Wow.
do. And then it hit me. It was like, if you admit yourself, they'll drug you, and that's it. You'll be a vegetable. Like I had that intuitive guidance that came through, and I trusted it. And
And that's so important that you're saying this, because I
yeah,
feel like there are a lot of people going through the same situation. And that's one of the main reasons why I love talking about my personal spiritual awakening. And I love
yeah,
bringing people to talk about their journey, because then we know that we're not crazy, and we know that we're not alone, and we
yeah.
can be inspired, but also learn and look for a coach or a healer or a podcast or.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much for sharing.
No, of course. Thank you. Thank you. It's beautiful to be able to tell my story. I don't tell my story much anymore. So
Mhm.
thank you, because I've really been focused in the present and the future. I've left that part behind because I'm no longer struggling in that part.
Mhm.
I'm holding space for others in their struggle,
Yeah.
right? But there's no room for me to bring my struggle in. So
Mhm.
thank you to that I have the space now to be able
Yes,
to.
but it is
Yeah,
your journey is what brought you to today, where you
absolutely.
are, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So you were meditating, you heard the voice that
Yeah.
said, "Go to
Hmm.
Hawaii." And then what happened after? Like how did you even find, I guess, the courage
Mm.
to just leave
Yeah.
everything you had, all your
Yeah. Yeah.
career and
Hmm.
family?
In that moment, it wasn't courage. In that moment, it was, if I don't do this, I'm leaving this planet. It
Mm,
was a very stark, you have two paths, and you can choose one right now. Which one are you going to choose? And even though I felt so desperately scared and afraid for so long, and yearning to leave this physical body because I wanted peace, I
mhm,
wanted to rest, it felt exhausting. Every day, every moment felt exhausting. Waking up in the morning was exhausting. Eating, I remember eating was exhausting. It was too much energy for me to chew my food. And some something switched. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't conscious. It wasn't my mind thinking. It was divine intervention. I really
mm,
believe it was divine intervention. And my body just shifted. I remember my body shifting physically when I said, I'm going to Hawaii. And I don't know how, but this is happening. And even though I still had the fear of wanting to leave the earth, there was just something inside me that said, if you don't do this now, then you're leaving someone else to make that decision for you.
mm,
And that was striking, because then I realized for the first time that I was allowing my life to be led by others.
mm,
I was allowing my life to be led by what others thought was best for me, right? Yeah. Because I was a beauty pageant queen at one point in my life, and I was a
mhm,
professional dancer, and I had all of these glamorous, and I always use that word because it's it's not glamorous. It's
mhm,
not glamorous when you're not feeling whole within yourself. When you're using that glamour to give you some sort of meaning or depth or definition in life
mhm,
of yourself. Yeah.
mhm. And so then you packed and just booked
I
a
took
one-way
off,
ticket.
booked a one-way ticket with 1.5 suitcases, and I landed in the Big Island. Um, Here in Hawaii, and I took a yoga course. I had just enough money to get a plane ticket and take a yoga course. And I was living in a jungle. I was living in the rainforest for the next 6 weeks in a very intense yoga, deep immersion teaching certification program. And that was the dark night of the soul that I realized was a dark night of the soul. I had many dark nights before that, but I didn't understand what they were. It was just chaotic mess. But when I was in the jungle, I remember we would get up at 2 a.m. to start meditating until the sun rose. And I was trudging through the rainforest crying because I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? Why this isn't going anywhere? I'm still feeling the same way I was feeling in New York, because I had this idea that if I go to Hawaii, everything will lift. It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. It's still carrying you, right? Like you're moving places, but you're still carrying you.
It's still me. I still got this going on, right? That hasn't changed, right? And there was a moment in the rainforest, again, crying, a lot of crying. I'm a Pisces. I'm a Pisces. Yeah. And I didn't understand that my gorgeous Piscean nature was a gift. For back then, it was such a curse for so long. But then when I tapped into it, I realized that this is something that is a superpower. This emotion and this sensitivity. I was very, very sensitive and still am. But I've learned now how to allow it to be something that I can use to move forward, right? Instead of something that's holding me back.
Be an empowered empath.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel we're disempowered until we're empowered. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so you stay there until today.
I stayed and I hopped around different islands, and I landed in Honolulu after the third island. And I moved to a part of the island that was local, super, super, super local, right? I stuck out very, very much, and I needed to be in that place because I needed to be able to be comfortable being stuck out, right? And I also needed to connect with Mother Nature, something that I, as a New Yorker, even though I was raised Colombian, I was completely disconnected to my power as a female with Mother Earth, with the Aina. Aina is land here in Hawaii. And I lived in a very energetic part of the island called the West Side of Waianae on the island of Oahu. And that rebirthed me. I was able to start trusting those voices that used to come before and scare me. I was able to trust those voices as guidance now, instead of just that perpetual victim, perpetual self-hate, self-blame.
And did you try different healing modalities? How did you go from being in the dark night of the soul, crying in the jungle, to owning your gift, healing yourself?
I was very scattered for a while because I realized that I translated the seeker with purpose this time, but there was no direction, there was no intention, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the over surrender.
Yeah.
Mode, right?
Yeah. And then I was
when you go a little bit over, you're surrendering, and then you're like, oh, this is good. And then over.
And completely. And then I went completely 5D, where I was in a bartering system in life, and I was saying no to money and completely disconnecting from anybody that was toxic. I remember that period. Everybody was toxic now. The people that didn't understand me was toxic, right?
Yeah.
And
it's all up here, right? You're so focused on the crown chakra and the third eye. It's actually something that I talked about in one of my episodes. This happens, when we're just focusing on this and we just want to be connected up there. Kind of lose connection with Mother Earth. We become ungrounded. We don't care about money. We don't care about our earthly issues, earthly matters, right?
Yeah. Nothing mattered at that time. And I love that you said about the earth. One of the practices now, speaking out loud, is two of the practices was walking barefoot on the earth every day, and being with my garden. I had a garden. I was growing vegetables, and if there's nothing I did that day but to just water my garden, I felt accomplished, because it was a time for me to connect with nature. And then I started really having conversations
Mm.
with the plants and with the trees and with the birds and with my fruits. And interestingly enough, I don't have a green thumb. I did not past tense have a green thumb. I used to kill my plants. I would have 4 plants in my house and they'd be dead by the end of the month, right? And my good friend of mine was a farmer. He helped me organize the garden. And he said, oh, about 2 months, this is going to sprout. About 6 months, this is going to sprout. And I'm like, okay. And I just went and I did my due diligence every day. And every day I would talk to them and I would give them love. And it was always very high energy, positive, beautiful. And even moments where I would just allow myself to purge. I'd allow myself to purge while I was, and it was beautiful because I could feel like this kind of, when I would purge, I would feel this kind of protection.
Embrace.
Like embraced. I felt embraced and I felt heard and I felt seen by tomatoes and zucchinis.
That's the
right?
real plant medicine,
Yes,
right?
yes, right? And my friend, the farmer, came a couple weeks later to check on the farm, check on my little garden and everything, see how it's going. And he almost fell to the ground. He was shocked at how fast everything grew. He's like, what did you do? What did you put in the soil? And I'm like, nothing. He's like, what did you do? And I'm like, I don't know. I talked to them. And it was very at this point. And then I realized, that's when I realized the power of energy right there. That it's all about energy. It's all about what's happening in here gets reflected out there. When before it was always about what's happening out here will allow me to be what I am in here. Yeah, that was really, really powerful. And then walking barefoot on the earth, what we call grounding or earthing, to really, one, to connect to the earth and work on the base chakras, right? And we forget a lot, the root chakra, the sacral, right? The solar plexus. But then also moments of purging, just giving my low level vibrations, to Mother Earth. And again, feeling embraced. Like, it's okay, baby girl, I got you. I remember hearing that all the time.
She's a mother, right?
Yes.
Mother
yes,
Nature.
yes. Very much.
It's amazing. And other than that, did you find that other healing modalities helped you?
So movement, really important. So yoga, dance. I love to dance. I love to just blast a song, put it on shuffle, and the first one that comes up, whatever it is, trusting in the divine guidance, that's what I need to do to move my body, right? Because it's very easy to get stagnant when we're going through this process, right? Because we feel depressed and we feel tired and we feel alone. And it's like, I didn't want to get out of bed for days. I remember for days, and I didn't want to take a shower. I didn't want to eat. But really allow myself to move, right? To dance or yoga or just stretch, right?
Yeah,
but
and I think this year especially, this has been so important because a lot of us are staying at home for a long time, and I feel like moving my body, just dancing, going for a walk, it really, really helps.
Yeah. And connecting with others for me didn't happen till a lot later, because I didn't really have anybody that understood where I was coming from. I was the crazy, woo, you're so weird, stop being weird. Like,
but
you're fine.
Even in Hawaii?
Even in Hawaii, there's a perception here that, Hawaii's paradise, but Hawaii is still part of America. Hawaii is still, part of this global earth where there's conditioning and there's survival, right? And there's a lot of escapism that happens a lot here in Hawaii too. So I would, if I did connect with anybody, I realized there was too much of an escape with those that I did connect with. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want to keep escaping. I'll get that in between. I really want to come back to center. And then those that were centered and focused were too dense for me, too earth, right? And not enough to New York, right? So I had like these two worlds, right? It was about bringing those two together, bringing the energy of the core of Hawaii, because the core of Hawaii and Hawaiian traditions, I really was blessed to have had a Hawaiian partner who was very well versed in Hawaiian tradition and culture. And he was also reviving that in the area that we were living in. Um, and it was very beautiful. It is continuing to be beautiful, how they respect and trust their ancestors, their
Mhm.
spirit guides, and they respect and trust the Aina, the land. Like it's a common conversation for those that haven't been conditioned just yet, right? Because Hawaii is also going through its own
Mhm.
awakening process, and it's
Yeah, but
fascinating.
there is a special energy, right? I've never been, but
Yeah,
it's definitely one of
yeah,
my top three destinations.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
But
feel like there is a special energy. I think,
yeah.
I'm not sure, I might be saying something really silly, but is it the heart chakra of the planet Earth?
Yes, yeah, it is. It is. And then if we go a little bit deeper, it's where Lemuria was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
One of
yeah.
the islands, right? Because I think it connected to Australia and
hmm New Zealand,
New
yeah.
Zealand. Yeah.
And it's fascinating because the Mauna 2000 last year I think it was, the Mauna was the, I don't know if you got winds of this, but they were looking to build a 13-meter telescope on the tallest what mountain in the world, but it's tall because it's in the water. It's deep underwater, right? Not the tallest in the physical peak. Um, and the Hawaiian community started coming together to speak up and raise their voice and say no. Like we can't keep doing this. We can't keep allowing our voices to not be heard. Like this is our land. They were looking to build a telescope on land where ancestors were
Hmm.
buried, where they would go to seek the ancestors. So I was part of that movement last year, and it was very beautiful to see. I felt like that's kind of like sparked what was happening with all indigenous races across the globe. So to be here in Hawaii during this Corona pandemic, I like to call it, is really fascinating, because I'm able to see the nurture that people are beginning to understand that's necessary, right, for the land and for themselves. Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating stuff. I think we need to have another talk.
Another talk on that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you were in Hawaii in your healing journey. What happened, or how did you get to, say, own your gifts, empower yourself, and you decided, I don't know if it was a decision, but you told yourself, I'm going to help others. I'm going to
Yeah.
coach. I'm going to be a guide. How did that transition happen?
So it felt very natural to me. I've always been a giver. I've always naturally counseled people. I've always naturally been the one that people would come to if they needed a shoulder.
Mhm.
Um, but then it was interesting because when I first started doing this work, I realized that I was doing the work to satisfy the gaping hole that was still inside me. I still hadn't fully done the work. And now that I'm able to look back 5 years ago when I started this work, how different my approach was, right? Because there was still remnants, and there always is remnants, right? This is an ongoing evolutionary process. It doesn't end, right?
Expanding. We keep
Yes, it continues to
expanding. Mhm.
expand. Yeah, but it's very different today than it was back then. When now it's like it's just fully serving, and the reason why I chose to serve and I choose to serve now is because it doesn't have to be so hard. This journey does not have to be so hard. It's a choice we make to allow it to go in that direction, and that's okay. There's no right or wrong. It's not about that. But for me, it felt more like if I could hold space for someone that is willing to just surrender to the journey with someone guiding them, then how much nicer would it be to allow them to come into their potential, you
Mhm.
know, at a, um, a faster rate. I'm having a hard time using these words because it's not about time. Everyone's got
Yeah.
their own journey, but I've made the intention that those that are really willing to just dive deep and surrender, transformation happens like that. It's beautiful. And then teaching them tools to continue the transformation process, right? Because again, it keeps going. And it feels like it's the reason why I'm here on this planet. It's my purpose, for lack of a better term, right?
But that's the
And
best term. It's your soul. And I
yeah,
believe
yeah.
that you had to go through everything you had to go through. And
Mhm.
I know you honor your
Mm.
journey and all the
Mhm.
ups and downs, and
Yeah.
because it got you to the point where you are today, and you're able to guide fellow humans,
Mhm.
share your story, and give them tools because you've gone through these things. And I think this is a very important thing for anybody who's looking for a coach or healer. um, you need to do the work. It's like you need to go through shit
You do.
and learn
You
by
do.
yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that I admire with whoever I work, is like I like to work with people that are true, that they say,
Mm.
yes, this is what I've gone through, this is
Mhm.
what I was thinking, this is what I used to believe. And even to this day, I have these and this and these issues. I'm not perfect, but I've learned a few things, and I want to share it with you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that's also a big part of the work the the sharing is beautiful because it allows a person to feel seen and
Hmm.
heard and understood, right? And when we feel seen and heard, then we feel safe,
Yeah,
right? When we feel safe, then we can honor this process deeper, in a deeper perspective. It feels, yeah.
beautiful. So can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do now?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
So, my I work with any human that's open and willing to do the deep dive. My work is very deep. The deeper we want to go, the better. Um, and my process really with individuals is to help them find their own inner teacher, right? I really believe that we all have the guidance within us, right? We really have the wisdom within us. Jesus was an incarnation at that time. Buddha was an incarnation at that time, right? And who's to say we're not Jesus or Buddha? We're not those incarnations now
Mhm.
in this present day, right? So I really hold space in a very authentic and vulnerable. Those are two very big words I use in my work. Vulnerable way to allow the person to just explore. It's all about exploring. It's not about me directing and telling them what to do because as an intuit, I'm always receiving information, right? And I really believe I'm connected with the higher self of the individual. I can read a lot of things that they can't see. I just say, the messages get rerouted to me because you have a little blockage going on. That's all, right? So my work is not to tell you the messages. My work is to hold space so you can discover the messages on your own,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's the biggest value of the work that I do because I want my people to eventually fly away, birdie fly away,
Yeah.
right? And allow themselves to expand, right? And it's not about staying with me for a year, 2 years, 3 years, right? And I have a very hard time. People say, "Oh, you're my guru," and I'm like,
Yeah.
like
You are your own hero.
you are your own guru. I'm just holding space. I'm creating the container, right? So there's a little bit of direction, right? In the process, right? Because it's very easy for us to keep falling off and getting lost and having to restart. So yeah.
Yeah. And I love your approach to, um, it's very playful, right? You remind
Yeah.
your clients and your followers, everyone, to play
Yeah.
more, right? To take
Yeah.
life not so seriously. And I think that's something that you've learned, maybe the hard
Mm-hmm.
way, but in the past we're so serious,
Mm-hmm.
trying to have the life in New York, and then you just surrendered. And I think that's a big lesson, and it's something that I'm personally still learning. I think we all are. I constantly have to remind myself, well, let's play more, just play, don't take
Mm-hmm.
life so seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I
Yeah.
like that approach from you. And I also love that you're very like no BS. It's like if
No.
you want to go deep, let's go deep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people want to go deep,
Mm-hmm.
but they find a lot of resistance. I think it's just natural, even, in our
Mm-hmm.
journeys. How do
Mm-hmm.
you help people get through
Mm-hmm.
the resistance?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you know what I mean? Sometimes they want to go
Yeah.
deep. They have the
Yeah.
awareness. It's not
Yeah.
working for me. I want
Yeah.
a different life. I want to
Yeah.
surrender, but there's
Yeah.
always like this wall.
Yeah. And this is where part of my work is magic. This is where part of my work is just being really present in that moment and allowing myself to be guided to their energy, right? So, first and foremost, I will call you out. I will
Mhm.
call you out on your shit, and I think that's one of the keys to the work. I'll call you out with love. I'm all about tough love, right? Unconditional love, and also just uh, allowing. Wait, go back to the question. I'm sorry, I just went
How do you help people break through the
through.
resistance?
Okay, um, it's helping them hear their own voice, helping them hear their own crazy. My first platform was We Create Our Crazy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just how we create our crazy, we can also create our calm because we are creators, right? So it's reflecting back to them with their tape recorder, and then having them learn to discern what is the tape recorder, right? What is the mental mind? I call it the Rolodex, right? That we flip through and we just take from uh, a situation that happens, right, in the present, in the physical state, versus trusting, what's coming through, right? Trusting the divine wisdom that's coming through. So it's really an art in a sense that I can't fully put into words because it just happens because I'm present, because I'm doing my work every day. I'm grounded within myself every day. I'm taking care of myself. And it just naturally, it's like because I'm doing me, I'm able to naturally hold space to help them do them. So if I have to put it into words, it's really reflecting back to them, what they're living, what they're unconscious to, and helping them. I call it see the ridiculousness. The ridiculousness. Like, I had a client that I spoke with this morning, and he's in a state, he's in a bit of a flux, and he's saying, everything is falling apart. I'm like,
We've
what do
all
you
been
mean?
there.
Yeah, yeah, but it's wonderful to be able to be like, what are you talking about? Nothing's falling apart. Like everything is perfectly in place. So it's fascinating to see like how some the folks just click. It's like, oh my god, yeah, you're right. No, the house isn't burning. No one's dying. I'm perfectly fine, right? So it's meeting and massaging the discernment process, and then allowing it to just release piece by piece, right? It's a dance. It's a dance. Like it's not a pill that you take
Yeah.
and all of a sudden everything goes away, right? It's a dance. You're gonna have days that are amazing, and you're gonna have days when you're down, and then giving yourself permission to feel what you need to feel in that moment when you're at a
Mhm.
lower level. Like if you
Mhm.
have to sit in all day and cry, do that.
Yeah.
But give yourself a time limit. Give yourself a time limit. Do I want to do this again tomorrow? Is this going to feel good tomorrow? And helping them work with their mind, helping them connect their heart to their mind,
Mhm.
to see what is best for them in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's like giving them a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're looking at a wall, but you're missing the point. It's a door.
It's a door.
Right?
I love that.
It's a
Yeah.
door.
Yeah. I love that.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And do you have any projects, any courses, anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, so I'm about to create a podcast called Trust Your Dopeness, and I believe we're all dope, right? We're all amazing. We're all amazing in our own right. It's just a matter of trusting it and surrendering to it, and it's going to be a playful, exciting, adventurous, no bullshit, speaking our truth podcast where I want to make this conversation light because I can go very, very deep, but I can also be very, very light. And then helping others understand that when we need to go deep, we go deep. But then when we need to stay light, we stay light because that's just the journey, right? It's not about always being light. It's not about always being deep either. It's about learning to dance, between the two. And that's something I've learned in my shamanic work. I work with Mother Aya, ayahuasca, and working with plant medicine, it's like you learn, and as a shaman, to dance in the dark and in the light, to dance in those two worlds. And those that because everything's divine intervention, those that come to my door have the capacity to be able to dance. It's just a matter of giving them courage, right, and holding space for them to find their own courage, that it's possible for them. Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
thank you.
You were talking about ayahuasca,
Yeah.
and earlier you were telling me about how you felt like Mother Nature was like protecting you and embracing you,
Yeah.
and I felt exactly the same when
Yeah.
I had my ceremony. Just this pure, unconditional love, embrace everything, and I was protected.
Yes. Yeah.
That I was
Yeah.
safe, and that I was part of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. The oneness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
The oneness
beautiful.
truly exists.
We're gonna have
Yeah.
to have another chat.
Another one. Yeah.
So, Melissa, what are you looking forward to in the next maybe like 5 years? What are you excited about in your personal life, in your business, and for Mother Earth, for the collective?
Yeah. Well, I'm uber grateful that we're experiencing what we're experiencing. I'm now able to see. I say whenever I'm exposed to a reality that's not delicious, right, with what's happening in the world, with the violence and everything, and the fear, I'd say just take out the popcorn. Take out the popcorn. Watch what's in front of you. And you can choose to engage, you can choose to be there, or you can choose to actually walk a different reality, right? Supporting those that want to stay in the film, whichever way they need to. And we don't have to be in the film in order to support, right? We can support, I call it a detached observer,
and be compassionate towards.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's key. That's key, right? Because we're never taught to have compassion. I believe we're being conditioned that compassion is for the weak, or if you were compassionate, you were compassionate to just serve the other, with that unconscious understanding that you're going to get served back. And when you don't get served back, that's when the madness starts to happen, right? Because we have these expectations that aren't being filled, right? So tantric, I've been doing a lot of work with manifestation, and really helping others become conscious, deliberate manifestors, right? Because we're always manifesting. Every moment of every day we're manifesting, but a lot of us we're manifesting unconsciously because we don't realize that we actually create our reality. Look at that. We co-create our reality, right? I say we co-create with the universe, with God, whatever label everyone has their own, and that's okay, right? But now I want to dive a little bit deeper and go into tantric manifestation, right? So really using the sexual energy, right, and the urge as fuel for creation. I mean,
they're so related, right? The sexual energy with manifestation,
related.
the sacral.
So related. Yeah, so related.
Because of sexual energy.
Right. So I want to go deep in understanding the dynamics and the works in that, and create retreats here in Hawaii or in different parts of the world, intimate retreats. Like one area that I'm also touching is conscious uncoupling, right? Or just couples that want to to reinforce, their relationship, strengthen the relationship. But with conscious uncoupling this is a reality. I've been married to you for 10 years. I fell in love with you when we were married. And now that I'm stuck in the house with you 24 hours a day, 7 weeks, I don't think I like you so much anymore. And that's okay. Like speaking our truth, finding our truth, right? That's one thing as well. One mechanism that I felt I really had to learn to use as part of my healing process is just speaking my truth, even if it made people uncomfortable, even if it made exactly the throat chakra, even if it pissed people off. I tend to piss a lot of people off, and I'm like, I'm just speaking my truth. And I had a lot of fear, and then when I let go of that fear, I realized, oh, I'm making you uncomfortable because you're not ready to hear this. That's all. That's all, right? I'm gonna do me, and you do you, right? And I'll still send you love. Yeah, I still love you, right? Sending you kisses, right? And with the tantric manifestation, like I really have, with manifestation in general, I really learned to understand how to use the divine masculine and the divine feminine energies in creating the manifestations, right? So I believe that we have to begin with the surrender, right? And the chaotic creation. I say divine feminine is chaotic creation, right? And there's a misnomer to what chaos is, and I'm like, I think chaos is actually beautiful. I mean, you create art. You can create art from chaos, right? So it's really surrendering to the divine feminine and the play and the urge, what feels good, right, to produce, and then just trusting. Okay, I planted the seed, I set the intention, this is what I desire, and I'm going to allow myself to feel the yumminess of what that creation would feel like, as if it's happening now in the present moment, right? And then trusting all the little golden nuggets of wisdom, this random person that came,
which is a very feminine energy too.
Right? And then the masculine is actually doing the action, right? Like when a random divine intervention individual calls you about a project that in that moment, maybe it didn't make any sense. It wasn't part of your manifestation, but by just trusting, right, and taking action, the dominoes, get together, right? Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Amazing. I would love to have you again sometime to talk specifically about the tantric manifestation, which is something that I'm really interested in. Don't know that much about it, but it's something that has been on my mind for a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's gorgeous to see how we can recreate this definition of sex that has been so tainted, like with pornography and expectations, and this disconnect from our orgasms, that it's something we have to do, or, and it's a beautiful process, a beautiful journey. And I'm super excited to come back. Yeah.
More layer of the healing journey. And it's, at least for me, my personal journey, it's something that's been showing up as of maybe last year or 2 years, because I've repressed a lot of sexual energy for most.
That's the recovering Catholic for you. At its finest.
Many years are spent in the closet too. Yeah. So then it's undoing a lot of things and really connecting with the heart, connecting the sacral with the heart, the sexual energy with the heart. And there's a lot of power, and I totally agree with you. There is a lot of power in manifestation when you tap into this heart sex energy. So it's something that I'm also learning, studying, experimenting.
Okay, perfect. So we must reconnect and share our stories. I'd love that.
So just to end up, I have, as usual, the fun and deep questions.
I love that.
I'll try to make different ones from the last one. What's your definition of surrender?
Allowing, receiving.
Continue the sentence. The power of intuition can
allow you to be free.
If you could live as an animal, which one would it be and why?
So to come, a bird to have the freedom to fly and to be able to see the entire gamut. And a leopard comes up next, to really allow myself to be in my prowess and my power, intuitively guided. Yeah, that's the yin and the yang that exists within me. Yeah.
All right, let's suppose we sign contracts before coming into this life, which I believe we do somehow.
Agreed.
And then we choose what we came here to learn as well as to teach. What do you think this would be for you in this lifetime?
To learn the multidimensional, unlimited potential that exists within me, and then to teach it to the next person, to teach that we all have magic within us. It's just a matter of trusting it, having faith, honoring it, and just being it, surrendering. Yeah, just being it.
I love that. Well, Melissa, I want to acknowledge you for your courage to leave a life that you thought you wanted, but you didn't, and surrender and trust in this inner guidance. And I want to thank you for shining your light and helping fellow humans to find their inner guidance and their inner guru. And especially, I want to thank you for reminding all of us to play more and to trust our dopeness.
Thank you. I received that. Yes, trust your dopeness.
I am very grateful to enjoy this journey of life with you.
Thank you. Same here, brother.
Lots of love.
Love you, honey. Yeah, same
Bye.
here. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you would like to learn more about Melissa's offerings, please visit her website, www.melissafaithramirez.com, and also follow her on Instagram and YouTube. As always, links are available on the show's notes. And once again, if this has brought you value, please subscribe to my podcast and take a screenshot of it, share it to your Instagram story, and be sure to tag me and Melissa so we know that it's brought you value. And your friends might benefit from this episode too. As always, keep shining your light, keep your heart open, and let love lead the way. I love you so much. See you in the next episode.